a sense as to what's right
Yes, sir.
and what's wrong. And so part of this would be to try to focus on many of the things we've talked about in the past in other classes, but now we're going to narrow it in terms of focusing just on the ego. You know, Freud talks about the id and the ego and the superego. What we're going to be focusing on is the adaptive feature of the ego, meaning the internal strength of the individual to make decisions and to adjust and to have a more disciplined life. So we basically will be looking at that. For example, in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and I think verse 11, Paul says, such were some of you. And in that particular passage, Paul is talking about the change that these Corinthian Christians were able to make. So what we will be looking at is to look at the human side of that change. Not, you know, we know the redemptive side, we know the God side, but we'll be looking at what is it that we have inside of us to be able to make those changes in our lives, the strength that we have. Every day you're faced with decisions that you must make. And so we will be focusing on being able to identify some of those traits and characteristics that empower us to reshape and to make changes every day in our lives. Some of the decisions that you have to make may be very sacrificial, may be very tough, but it is, you know, they are disciplined. And so we want to look at and to explore that. And then, so the other side of that would be, how do you empower people to pull on their internal strength to make changes in their life? So as a counselor, what you want to do is to recognize a person's strength, recognize what they bring to the table, and then to empower them to be able to, to operate on an everyday basis, making decisions that are going to be in their best interest. So within a counseling setting, in order for change to occur, and I will somehow get some of these notes to you, in a counseling scenario, in order for change to occur, you have to have at least three things present. The first one is the environment that is set up. So an example would be, if you think about doing worship service in a building where the next apartment, they're doing construction, and there's hammering, there's all kinds of stuff, distracting stuff was going on. And then you're asking people, you know, to sort of meditate on the Lord's Supper and focus and all of that stuff. But there is all kinds of noise going on with, you know, tractors and the hammering and the nailing. And so you can see how that environment will be not helpful for them to continue to worship. So for example, with the COVID, for example, where, you know, let's say the building can only house maybe 75 people, but that Sunday you have maybe 150 people show up. I mean, you've seen weddings where people have to stand, there's no room to house and to accommodate people. And so people are standing. So if that thing is going to go for an hour and they're standing for an hour, you could see how uncomfortable that is. So what I'm saying is, in order for change to occur, there has to be, the environment has to be conducive for the change to happen. So if people are sitting, for example, on benches that are so uncomfortable, and therefore the service is going to go on for 2 hours, you could see how that may be distracting or uncomfortable for them as well. Or it might be in the US where it is now winter, but the heat is broken in the building. And so if it's people are extremely cold, you could see how that may be distracting. Or in Jamaica, for example, where, you know, the weather, the temperature may be up to 110, you know, really, really hot, and everybody is fanning and people are sweating. You could see how that could be uncomfortable for people to listen to you while you're speaking or doing whatever you're doing. So the same thing is true in the counseling setting. The environment has to be appropriate for that to happen. Do you guys understand that point? That in order for change to happen, the environment itself
Yes, sir.
has to be conducive. Yes.
For example, for a baby born in a family that is an alcoholic family, so it will be difficult for this baby to not become in the future an alcoholic. You understand? So seeing his mother and his father drinking alcohol, smoking, you understand, and this
Right.
baby will be in the church, and it will keep some time those habits. You understand? It will be difficult for him to leave those things because it's a part of his life. I can say that it's a part
Right.
of his.
Okay. That is well said. So and your name again is
Israel, sir.
Israel. Okay, Israel. And the next student is
Nicholas Golden.
huh?
Nicholas Golden.
Nicholas
Yes.
Golden. Okay. And so you are actually a third year.
Yes, sir. I was in the class.
Hmm?
Yes, sir. So I have to follow 2 hours of yours, sir.
What did you say?
I was in the class of yesterday with third year.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So so that's the environment. So for example, if you were in a movie, watching a movie, and everybody around you were talking and playing and laughing, you could see how it's going to cause you to start reacting or having thoughts about it, maybe quietly, silently, but your brain is going off because of the distraction that you're having. So the same thing is true, you know, is to create an environment that people can concentrate and focus on what they're doing. So that's one area. The second thing that's important is actually there's four, but I mentioned three, four. So the second thing has to be the person themselves. Okay, what they bring to the table. Do they really want change? Are they there to seek change? Are they coming to worship because they really love God and really want to experience that? Or are they because their parents forced them to come? What is their motive? This is an issue of motive. Why are you seeking the help? Why are you coming to worship? Why are you seeking counseling? It's because the police force you into it. I have a lot of patients who have committed driving while drunk and they took away their license. So they're forced to come to counseling because in order to get their license back, they have to do it. But they're not there because they want counseling, they're there because they have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people come to worship not because they love the Lord or want to be there, but maybe because they have no choice. It may be a young man who have no interest, but in order to stay in the home and to to get the benefits of that, they have to go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So they go to worship.
So I'm witness of that. I know some people who go to church 15 years in the church, but they are not Christian.
No, somebody's forcing them to go.
Yes. When you ask them some question, why do you come here? They say that I know there is a God. Only that. I know there is a God.
But that's not good enough, isn't it? There's not going to be much change.
Yes, yes. They have to be improved.
There's not going to be any change, and they're not going to make any meaningful contribution in the process. They just sit and go, come and go, basically. So they're not really invested. They're not a part of it. But if you notice that as soon as a person is converted, they have the commission where Jesus said to go and make disciples and teach. So they have to be able to, that's a commission that they have. They have no choice. So that's the second thing. The second thing has to do with the person, their motive. Why are they there? What's going on inside? What do they bring to the table? And that's where the ego psychology comes in, because you're looking at the internal strength of the person. That's the basis for change. And that's what you want to tap into, is what they bring to the table. So if they believe in God, that's a good starting point. That's where you start with them. And so that's the thing. Now the third thing is the therapist, is the counselor, or the evangelist, or the preacher, because they bring something to the table. So if the preacher is the kind of person that you don't like, you know what I mean? Then certainly you don't want to go, you don't want to listen, and you couldn't wait for them to shut up and sit down. You know what I mean? Because they're boring. They're wasting your time. That is why some churches in the denominational world grow so fast, because the preacher is very charismatic and they like him, and everybody flock to hear him speak. They buy his books, they buy his tapes, they buy everything because he is charismatic and they love his voice. If you notice that certain people have just that voice, their voice is commanding, basically. And so some preachers are very boring. I mean, you may have heard preachers who practically put you to sleep. You couldn't wait for them to end the session, and so you can actually move on. So that's kind of where the person, the preacher, the teacher, the elder, the therapist, have a part to play. And either people are going to like you or they don't like you. Maybe your personality is the kind of personality where, people tend to run from you. They avoid you. And it may also have, even down to the way you dress, maybe easy to look at as opposed to, you know what I mean? It just doesn't, just the way you carry yourself, just the way you speak has a lot to do with how people will accept you, trust. As a matter of fact, trust is important. And if the people that you're trying to help don't have trust in you, obviously they're not going to believe what you say, and they're not going to implement it because there is no trust in that. So go ahead.
Yes, as a preacher or minister, how can we improve in that sort? So not to force the people to accept you, but to be familiar with them.
Yeah. Well, it has a lot. I think people want to know that you know your stuff and you know what you're talking about. So if they think that you are incompetent, which they will figure out sooner or later, people will evaluate you to know whether or not you are competent or not competent. And if they conclude that you are not competent, then therefore you're wasting their time and you're wasting your time. So it means then that you have to be able to command the respect of the people in order to get them to listen, if change is going to happen. So now you have the environment, you have the person you're trying to help, what they bring, and then it's you. Now, the fourth thing, the fourth piece to this is the method, the ritual. I say ritual. By that, I mean, you have to believe that the program you're giving them is something that will change their life.
Yes, sir.
What do I mean by, and I say the ritual, what do I mean by ritual? There's something you believe that if they get will change their life. As a gospel preacher, it may be the gospel. As a therapist, it may be whatever that therapy is that you believe in. You believe that if they understand this, it's going to change their life. Paul says, I don't want to know anything among you save Jesus and him crucified. Remember that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 1-4. Paul clearly says, this is what I'm bringing. It is the death, burial, and resurrection. If you accept this, you allow this in your life, it will transform your life. So that's, again, where, there may be some issue where some of the largest churches in the world, the doctrine that they present may not necessarily be the same doctrine that you are presenting, that you believe in. For example, there are people who may believe that baptism is important to salvation. You do, I do. But there are others who may say that that's not necessary to salvation. All you have to do is just say a prayer and I pray for you and you're good to go. In other words, that's the ritual that I'm talking about. That's the doctrine that I'm talking about. That has to be there. Because if the environment is good, if the person is willing and ready to change, and you are committed to helping them to change, but at the same time, the gospel, the doctrine, the ritual that you're bringing to the table, or the therapy that you're bringing to the table doesn't work.
Yes, sir.
No change will occur. So those are the four things that you really need in order to change individuals and to change people. If those things are there, but I want you to understand though, that the fourth one, the ritual, the doctrine, the therapy, the form of therapy, there are so many different forms of therapy. There is the behaviorist, there is the cognitive behavioral therapy, there is the psychoanalysis, there is the ego psychology, there is the self-psychology, there are just so many different types. There's acupuncture, there's meditation. There's just so many different forms of therapy that people are presenting that they believe in that can change a person's life. So you have to know what you believe and you have to have confidence in it. Because if you're not sure about what you're doing, about what you believe, then why should someone believe that you have the answer to their problem? Doesn't make any sense. So I give you an example. I'm a substance abuse, drug and alcohol counselor. And at the place that I work, everybody take their break to go outside and smoke. All the therapists, they take their break because they have to go outside because they're not allowed to smoke in the building or even on the premises. It's against the law for them to do that. So they will get in their cars and they'll smoke. And then they take their 50 minutes break in order to do that. But some of these people are running groups telling people how to overcome addiction. And they're supposed to be an expert in it. You follow? Doesn't make much sense, does it?
Yes, sir.
Now, in the church also, though, you may have preachers who are talking about the power of the gospel to change lives, but you see them acting in ways they shouldn't be acting, and they're supposed to be an expert in the gospel.
Yes, sir.
So eventually, once you see these people doing something that is contrary to what they are preaching, you lose faith in them,
Yes, sir.
and therefore nothing they say to you would ever be listened to. So if you see a man who is married cheating on his wife and he's a preacher,
Yeah.
will you ever trust him and believe in him?
No, sir.
Okay. So there are preachers that nobody will listen to, even though he's still the preacher, because his life doesn't match what he's selling. And so if your life don't match what you're selling, why should people listen to you? Doesn't make any sense. So again, you can see how, go ahead.
Yes. Concerning the things that you're saying there, I think another reason too that because you're saying that if you're confident in what you believe in, you have to be confident in what you believe in. So I think one of the reasons many persons in the Church of Christ do not share the gospel as much as they should, or do not have that confidence, is because they do not study the scripture enough to be equipped. And so they think, because I about a lot, and I know this to be a fact. So they do not want to share the gospel because they're afraid that if they say something, somebody may counteract, and then they do not have the answer to give to them, or they may not know to quote a particular scripture to defend what they're saying. And so they back down from that. And so I see that happening a lot.
Right. But that's really critical in if you understand why people change. Because in order for people to change, it means the person who is doing the change agent, which is the person you're talking about, right? If they don't know and have confidence in what they are supposed to be giving, then why should the person have any confidence in them? So it goes both ways. They don't have confidence in themselves. That's going to infect the other person, and the other person wouldn't have confidence in them. But there's another piece to this. And the other piece is respect. Because, a person, you can be sympathetic with a person if they're learning with you. They don't have, you know what I mean? You know that they're learning and they're honest about that. So you can sort of become a co-therapist, a co-learner. But if what they are trying to get you to learn, they don't practice, then the issue of respect comes in. And once the issue of respect comes in, it undermines everything that that person will do. And sometimes what happens, and I think that is why Jesus emphasized forgiveness, because, someone may do something, and 5 years may pass and they never really address it, but it's still in your brain. And so that person is finished. They're over with. They're done, basically. I remember years ago, I was in Manhattan, and one of the famous preacher who does a lot of debates and stuff like that. You probably know, he's probably passed now, but in Manhattan, in the Harlem area, very famous. He does gospel preaching, used to all over the world, within the Church of Christ. One day I'm in Manhattan, and I saw this guy buying lottery tickets. And I know that he's one of those persons who is really tough, that this is gambling, you can't do this, right? And I saw him buying. To this day, that thing never, ever left my mind. It stood there because I know that he was not. As at that moment, I know that this is a man who's never genuine. You cannot. He's just preaching is just a professional job. Has nothing to do with his character, has nothing to do with his thing. So that lend itself to disrespect. And so when that respect is eroded, then that person becomes handicapped in terms of helping to bring about change. So that is why among young people, especially preachers' children, sometimes we wonder why they go astray and why they do some of the outlandish things that they do. Because at home, the father is like a little demon in the house. You follow? But he's a saint in the pulpit. And the children know that. So as soon as they reach a certain age where they can be on their own, guess what? They leave the church. They have nothing to do with it because they know that whatever the church is marketing couldn't be good. It doesn't work because they live with their father and they know his life, but they see two sides to him. They see him at home and they see him at the pulpit.
Sorry.
And yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir. About the therapist and or the counselor, I want to take an example. When I was, I'm still young, but when I was like young than that, I had some preachers who were like my counselor, and I see them doing something that is not right. And while I'm asking why you do those things, because you know yourself that those things are not right. They told me that follow what I say, listen to what I say, but don't do what I do. You understand? So
Yeah.
they know the thing is not right, but they still do this thing. You understand?
Right. But the real lesson there though is what they're telling you.
Yes.
Is that what they are preaching and presenting doesn't work. That's what they're telling you.
All right. Sir.
Because of the fact that it can't change their life. So they're marketing something that they know doesn't work.
No, who could have faith in this person if I see them like doing the same thing?
Well, but that's where respect, once you lose respect for a person, then you're done. Doesn't matter what they say, because you have no more confidence. Trust, in order for change to occur, you have to have trust between both parties. If you don't trust your doctor, right, then chances are you're going to get a second opinion. You follow? So you have to have trust. And if trust isn't there, then why should I be doing business with you? The only problem with that, though, is that people then argue, I'm coming not because of you, I'm coming because God wants me here. So some people continue to go simply because, not because they have confidence in the preacher, but simply because they feel it's a command for them to be there. And that's the only reason that they're there. I am saying when that happens, something else happened, because you can no longer be instrumental in helping the group to move forward. In order to help the group to move forward, we all have to be on the same page. We all have to believe in the same change agent. And so young people are the ones who actually lose out on this process. Because as soon as they reach the age of accountability where they can manage themselves, they will leave the church. And that's one of the thing I think I said to the last class, which we will probably touch a little bit on. Freud, which we've talked about in the past. Let me ask you, if you know, was Freud a Christian?
No.
Huh?
I think so.
You think so?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
wasn't.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No,
Yes.
Yes. Freud was a Jew. His parents, he grew up with the Torah.
Yes.
And Freud come to hate the rules of the Torah. And he was in rebellion And that is why to this day he died an atheist. All of Freud's theory is directed against the Bible.
Yes, sir.
Freud actually says that religion makes people become neurotic, mental illness.
Religion.
And so that's why he had to go back. You have to go back in the past to undo what religion. When Freud says superego, he's talking about the religious training that somehow messes us up. So therapy for Freud is to go back and silence the ego, the super ego, silence that, get rid. So that is all of the religious teaching which causes us to become mentally ill. Freud died an atheist. So that is why, even though he said some good things, to this day, he is a hated man, hated. There are three people that you can count on that, Americans and, don't really appreciate. Darwin, you know him, right?
Yes, sir.
Why is Darwin hated?
Because he's thinking about biology.
Yeah, because he says we come from monkey, we evolve. There's no God, basically. That's what he says, right?
Yes, sir.
Freud technically says the same thing. Freud look at it from a different standpoint. Freud is saying that our personality, our mental illness is as a result of the religious training that we got, the way we were processed. In other words, we want to have sex with our parents and we couldn't do it, and so we killed them, basically, and therefore we are doomed forever. So so Freud's therapy gives more permission to be whoever you want to be and think whatever you want to think. So that's the kind of thing. But what I want you to see, how important it is that the people that we attach ourselves to, if we believe, we have to come to believe what they're telling us. So it's the environment is important. If the environment isn't right, for example, if where you are is too hot or it's too cold, you're not going to be comfortable. So the environment has to be right. Sure. Just like I said, if you're trying to do worship service, everybody is making noise and the Lord's Supper, and people are, children are running around doing all kinds of stuff, it's going to be very distracting. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. As we are in the class of psychology, so I want to take the place of Freud, sir, to make a statement, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So
yeah, go ahead.
Freud said the religion is illusion. I'm kind of agree with that. All right, I'm a Christian and I don't have too much wealth, like I don't have too much riches. I'm a poor man, you understand? So how could someone who can tell me that my father in heaven, who is in heaven, is a rich man and possess the whole earth, you understand? And he just might have diamond, gold, those things like that. And he is my father. And I am a poor man. How could I believe in this father that has too much riches, but I don't have nothing? So I'm kind of agree with that, sir.
Right. Well, what Freud says essentially is this, that the child come to believe that his father is the wisest man on the planet. He is the loveliest man on the planet. He is the sweetest man on the planet. That's how boys grew up envisioning their father, basically. Then what happens is they then transfer that image to the man upstairs. So God becomes the father. Follow? So Freud is simply saying that there is no father like that. So the image is an illusion. Freud says that religion is an illusion because the young boy believed that his father makes no mistake. His biological father, that is. So he worshiped his father. Then that gets transferred to God. And then Freud says, not only that, he can't even see God. You follow? He can see his father, he can't see God. But after a while, Freud says, as a child gets older, he begins to see that his father is not perfect. And especially if it's a home where the father, like in Freud's case, his father was a very, 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 very straight. He was a devout, Torah guy. So he was really disciplining all the time. And so that's what Freud saw. And so when you come to God, who is asking of us all of these things, and then he's invisible, Freud said that this makes us sick because he can never be satisfied. How can you please an absentee landlord? Essentially, it's impossible to do. So Freud said the only solution is to get people away from that. And so you have to develop an atheistic kind of value. But it is, I think it was Bob Marley who had a song that says, I think it was talking about, some of us are saying, wait till you get to heaven to get it. Maybe Jimmy Cliff, I don't know which one of them did that. But, and the song is about, I need to have it now, here. I don't want to wait till I die to get it up there because it may not be there, essentially. So I'm not sure if that's what you're saying.
Jimmy Cliff.
Jimmy Cliff, okay, Jimmy Cliff sing that song. So again, the whole idea here is, and that's where, faith comes in. That's where faith comes in. And that is how dangerous it is when a young man grew up in a situation where you don't have a father. You could see how that becomes a problem. Now he's beginning to look to the next door neighbor, his peer, who may have a father who takes him fishing and does all of this, but he has none of that stuff. So you could see how the damage could be within that. And again, we're talking about if you want change, you're certainly going to have to be in an environment where you trust the persons who are, for example, if you're in a home and all you witness is alcoholism and physical abuse and all of that and vulgarity, eventually it takes its toll on the child. I was on my radio program last night. I was talking about an incident that happened in St. Vincent. And this is like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, somewhere around there. And this is a grown man who was having sex with a 4-year-old girl. And the man recorded it, videotaped it. And somehow the videotape wind up on the Facebook, you know what happened these days, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was convicted last week, I think, and they gave him 4 years in jail. And so the whole island was in an uproar that how can you give a man 4 years when people are looking at the video, and this was the girl, the 4-year-old girl was performing oral sex on this man who lives in the home. Basically, he is the caretaker of this child. And so, but there were other evidence that the child started probably when the child was even earlier, three, basically doing all of this stuff to this child. So in my discussion last night on my program, the issue is, how do you help, what kind of treatment that you will give to this young lady, this girl? So by the time she get to be, 12 and 13, okay, to be able to help her to overcome this. And not only that, this man, they give him 4 years in jail. The question is, when he comes back out, what can they do for him? Because there's something messed up. You realize there's something is horribly wrong with his psyche, with his brain, that for him to be using a 4-year-old girl and remember, he recorded it. That's how they found it, because it was on the internet and everybody was seeing this thing on the internet. So now the challenge that you have to think about is, what sort of remedial plan, what sort of corrective plan that you can give to this young girl, this 4-year-old child, to walk her through so that she can grow up to be a healthy individual. I think you can, if there's no treatment of any kind, and people, I didn't see the video, I didn't want to see it, but most people who saw the video, that the 4-year-old was operating like a professional. There were comments like she was doing it so well, like she was well schooled in what she was doing. So the question for you would be, what sort of a program, what sort of environment would you create for this 4-year-old? Remember, a 4-year-old. So whatever you're doing, you have to be able to tailor that therapy, that counseling session to reach her at her age, but also to be able to take her through from all of that to get her to where she can become a healthy individual. So the question, I guess, you should be asking yourself is this: what is it about the gospel and its application that will be able to help this young lady? Is it by just getting onto church and listen to someone preach for 45 minutes? Is that good enough? What are we talking about here? How do you package a treatment program to be able to help this young lady to recover and be who she needs to be? And that may be something, maybe I should give you that as an assignment. Maybe I should give you that as an assignment to sort of do a little paper, and sort of a remedial plan, and as part of the homework, something, that you can get some grades on, is to develop a sort of a treatment program of some kind. How would you approach it, and what would it look like for this 4-year-old child? Because remember, it may have to involve at the very early stage play therapy, because you can't go with cognitive, words. You understand me? You may have to get down to where you may have to use play therapy and stuff like that to reach her where she's at. Although she seemed, from what I'm hearing from the video, she seemed to seem a lot older than a 4-year-old child, because she was so schooled in whatever she was doing. But how do you reach that person? And those are, remember the 4 things we talked about: the environment, and then we talk about the girl herself, what she brings to the table. What she brings to the table is a very damaged young child. A damaged child. This is a child that is severely damaged. Okay, that's what you bring to the table. Then you need to have the modality, the ritual, the doctrine, the therapy that has within it the change agent, the changing process. And then you yourself has to be skillful enough, because not all therapists can work with children. As a matter of fact, some therapists will not even accept children because they're not skillful. They don't know how to deal with children, and they will not do that. So those are the things that you have to truly think about. So I'm going to give you that as an assignment to come up with a remedial plan to help this 4-year-old girl.
All right. Yes, sir. My question is that, all right. Would I be, all right, I'm the messenger. You understand? I'm the therapist or the counselor. So will I talking to this girl while she is 4 years old, or in the future when she become like?
No. If you wait until, remember the Bible says, train up a child in the way that she ought to go, so that when she gets older, she will not depart from it.
Yes, sir.
You can't wait. The damage is already done. Your program has to be, how do you undo that?
While she is 4 years old.
Right. How and so what I gave you a little hint. I said to you, you may have to start out with play therapy. So to reach her where well, most of you haven't worked in elementary or kindergarten, right? So if you haven't had that experience, it might be something you have to research, because then you have to meet the child. When I worked in the elementary school, when the therapy in my office, I get up out of my chair and we sit on the floor, and I have a lot of toys. And so we work on the floor. We follow with toys, because you have to engage the child where the child is at, right? And through that process, so you may have to engage her in play therapy and be able to move along. So be free to what I will be looking at is the 4 things.
Yes, sir.
How you apply the four things, which means the environment. So don't tell me you're sitting in a chair and the child is sitting in a chair. and you're doing therapy.
Yes,
It
sir.
wouldn't work. You follow?
Yes,
Have
sir.
you ever at a congregation where they have like a nursery? Have you ever gone into the nursery to see what happens in a nursery?
Trying to play at the same time.
Right, because that's all. That's where the child is at, right?
Yes, sir.
So, and that's what the man used to start out with. He just gave her the wrong thing to play with. You follow? So the video showed the child doing oral sex on this man, and while he was recording it.
So
That's
so basically what you're saying is that whatever the child was doing in the back of her mind, she still recognizes as a form of pain.
that's exactly that's that, and he rewarded her for that. You follow?
Yes.
And it seemed in the video that she had been doing it so well. So that it means there'd been a history behind it because she had become so good at it. And that's what was so caused a lot of citizens in St. Vincent to take to the street to really protest, because it was so horrible to be able to see a video like this. And so that's what I want you to think about in terms of developing a plan, because some of you are going to be preachers. Some of you are going to be in a position where you're going to be called upon to design educational program that is going to be suitable for the various age groups. And one of the age group that you may have might be a nursery, the kindergarten and stuff like that. And so you got to, sometimes preachers don't even think about that. They think that's a woman stuff, let the women take it, and they don't even think, it's not even part in their headset. But you got to understand that children are just as damaged as adults, and therefore the gospel must be applied at all age groups. And so we have to be sensitive to that. And that's why, I'm trying to sensitize you to the fact that your job is not just to teach adult class. A lot of preachers, even notice the preachers, which class do they normally take? The one with the most people, and it's the adult class. That's what, and then who they give to the rest, the young people and everybody else, okay? Your best teachers need to be with the younger people. And the younger it is, the more, that's where you need to put your stronger teachers. But why do we do this? Because of our ego. We want to be seen. We want to be recognized. So who's the best people to do that? It's the adult people. It's nice when they say you had a good lesson, I enjoy it. Okay. You think the kid, you think a 4-year-old is going to tell you that? A 4-year-old aren't going to tell you anything about that. They don't care. They're not even thinking about that. Unless you brought in some lollipops and some sweets and some stuff like that. Oh yeah, they'll be coming to your class every day because they're doing what they like and what they enjoy. So that's kind of what just an overview. We'll be looking at ego psychology primarily because that's the one I really want to focus on. And the reason that I want to focus on ego psychology, because that is the side of us that is adaptable. That's the side of us that make decisions. That's the side of us that causes us to make the sacrifice. Because when I say that, you remember Freud, the id, the ego, and the superego, basically. So the part of us that we really need to work with is the ego part, that part of it that makes the decision. It is the ego that controls the superego and controls the id. And that's where the discipline comes in, okay? And so that's where, ego psychology is really focusing on that side of us. They're saying that we are not just victims. We can make decisions. We have the internal strength to discipline ourselves and to make choices that are going to be in our best interest. And then once we do that, and if we have time, we probably will look at building a moral system, because as you do that, you have to be able to distinguish between right and wrong. So those are the areas that we'll try to focus on. And I have some material for you, but for right now, the assignment would be, and you have your own time, there's no deadline. And when you complete that, take your time, but you should be able to finish it before the semester ends. And so, any questions?
All right. This homework is for the trimester, sir.
Huh?
This homework is for the term.
Yeah, I mean, take your time and do it, because as you go, you're going to accumulate information as we go through, you know, this period. Just that you should start working on it now. Start having out on at least an outline.
Yes, sir.
So you keep filling in as you go, because you don't want to wait till the last moment.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Golden,
Yes, sir.
you don't say very much.
Not feeling well, sir.
You're not feeling well? Okay. Now you coming down with the COVID?
I think it's over.
You think it's COVID?
Flu.
Okay. Because I know, are you two guys in the same room?
No.
Okay, you all in separate rooms, right? Different places?
Yes, sir.
That's one thing about Zoom. You don't know whether people are in the same area. But try to get some help. Make sure that you're okay, you're safe.
So, sir, so basically for the homework, they want us to act like we're trying to help the girl through the situation that she has been through. Try to help her go through it step by step.
Yes. So start, just develop an outline first. Once you develop your outline, you can keep filling in as you go. Don't wait till the last moment. If you wait till the last moment, it's gonna be too much.
Yes, sir. Sir.
Yes.
I don't know all the law is in St. Vincent. I don't know.
Yeah.
If in St. Vincent, a 40-year girl can take his decision. You understand? So I don't know if this young girl can take decision. For example, if they bring her where his father will be judged. If he can
he already went to court and he was sentenced. They gave him 4 years.
Yes.
Last week he's doing 4 years. This man was a security guard too. Okay.
If this girl now want to freeze his father, take a lawyer and want to free his father. I don't know all the law is in St. Vincent. So this.
Well, the law in St. Vincent says the max he can get is 5 years. But the reason he got 4 years is because he plead guilty. And when you plead guilty, you get a little privilege. Because he plead guilty, he gets 4. But if he had not plead guilty and they found him guilty, he would have gotten 5. I'm saying that the law should be changed. He should get 30 to life. You follow?
Yes, sir.
30 to life would be, if it was US, he'd be looking at a whole lot of time. But in St. Vincent, that's what the law would give you, basically.
Yeah. I think the law needs to be changed indeed. That's slackness, totally.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's a shame. It's a disgrace.
Yeah.
Disgrace for that to happen. And if you know Ralph Gonzalez, right? He's supposed to be a man who's talking about education revolution, always talking and running his mouth. You understand? But here you have right in his thing, and a man do this and he can do nothing. He's silent about it. Nothing. Nothing. So,
great.
I mean, people, he's so great, but at the same,
I'm not sure if I logged on late. What time are we supposed to start? At 7:15 or at 7?
7:15. Okay. 7:15.
So,
7.
Oh, because when I came in, y'all already started. I felt like I was late.
7:15. No, who? I don't know. Your name is, sir?
Okay, my name is Ian McIntosh. I think we were in the same year 3 class yesterday. But
that's what I'm trying to figure out. So you were there yesterday. Okay.
Yeah,
so you're taking both?
Joel, yeah, because I did not take psychology on my last sitting. I was at the school before, and I had stopped.
Okay.
So I did
Okay,
not take
okay.
psychology in my last sitting, so they suggested that I take it from year 2.
Oh, okay, okay. So you're getting a double dip.
Yes.
Well,
Uh,
they have placed me in year 2 classes, but I should be doubling up on some courses because after you preach for 10 or 12 years, there are just some things you don't have to go through the due process.
Well, no, I understand. I understand.
Yeah,
I understand. Yeah, I
you,
understand.
you
that.
can,
Okay.
you can double something because of experience.
Okay, good. Makes sense.
yes. Brother Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
when I just came on, you were talking about the 4 things
Yes.
that are needed to change people. What are they? I don't know. I didn't
Okay.
get to hear.
The first thing, in order for change to occur, the environment must be appropriate. The environment. For example, if right now you are, and I said Sunday morning, and there's a construction going on in the next door building, and there's hammering all morning, you drive you crazy. If the building
Yes.
is too hot, everybody's fanning, kids are running around, the environment has to be okay. Then secondly, the person that you're trying to help bring something to the table. You have to listen to the person and respect the person and pull on their strength, not superimpose your agenda on them. You understand? You
Yeah.
listen to them. Because sometimes when people teach the gospel, they do all the talking and the person listening.
Yeah.
And when
True.
they finish, they say, "Are you ready to be baptized?" I said, "No, I'm not." I wasn't, I was being courteous. Sometimes people are courteous. Instead of say, "Shut up and let done," they just sit and listen to you, basically, because you like to talk. So you got to be able to value and see what the person bring to the table. And then
Sure.
once you understand what they bring to the table, you could pull on that. You follow?
Okay. Mhm.
Then that's the second thing. The third thing is what I call the ritual. Some people don't like when I do that. Ritual, you may call it the doctrine or the philosophy. You have to believe in something that you believe, this thing that I believe in can change people. We say the gospel. The problem with that is we don't know what it is in terms of application. You follow what I'm saying? We use the word
Yes.
gospel in a very broad sort of things, but it doesn't really work. If I come to you because I'm having problem in my marriage,
Mhm.
what am I seeking? And what is it you putting on the table that's going to help me? You follow? So that's what it is. So
Yeah.
the therapy is the next thing. And then the therapist himself is a factor in the change experience. If I don't respect you and I feel that you're a hypocrite, am I going to listen to what you're telling me? Doesn't make any sense. So the therapist himself must be a genuine article. It's like the brother said a while ago, that do what I say and not what I do.
Yeah.
That kind of approach doesn't work whatsoever. And then the is that the fourth?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the fourth thing. So in your assignments, try to demonstrate that you understand those. And I gave you the case. The case is this 4-year-old who was sexually abused. Now, your job is, it's easier if it was an adult to help the adults. But I want you to adjust yourself to the 4-year-old child, because that is more of a challenge for us. Okay. All right. So I know chapel is coming up. So take care, and I'll see you all again next Thursday.
Yes.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mhm.